I never listened to anything on the radio. There was never any music. Now, if I'm riding with you, maybe there would be, but in my car, I had cassettes and CDs, and I would listen to them over and over. Like, we could throw one in right now, and if he starts talking, I could probably finish the sentences because I heard them so often. It would be like you and I quoting a movie to each other. We just have some of our favorite lines memorized. Well, I have a lot of that stuff memorized. There's a book that I want to recommend to anybody who's interested in sales called The Psychology of Selling from Brian Tracy. The first chapter changed my life, and I'll read it every few years just because. But I learned about things like income thermostat, and I learned a lot from Tom Hopkins about, closing techniques and listening. But also too, the whole law of averages we talked about at the start of the show, just understanding your numbers and that losses will come and no's will come, and you've got to weather the storm and stay in the pocket, so to speak. But no, I didn't necessarily figure it out on my own. And certainly I learned some of that from my dad, but the biggest piece was riding around listening to Tom Hopkins and Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar and guys like that.
Where does that kind of drive come from? That's fascinating to me because as a 16-year-old, I was working at Steak and Shake.
Right.
And I sure as hell wasn't listening to tapes about flipping burgers in my car. Right. So where does that, I would assume it still exists in you. Where does that sort of tunnel vision come from? Because yeah, I'm listening when I'm 17 in my car, I'm listening to Limp Bizkit.
Right. No, I get that. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I was focused on success, and I had seen, my family grew up poor. My parents filed bankruptcy. I remember bill collectors calling the house and my mom saying, "Don't answer the phone. That's grown up business." Well, I know now that's bill collectors. And, she used to send the cable bill to the utility company and the utility bill to the cable company just to buy a few extra days. And I remember once she gave me $10 and to let me and my friends ride down to Taco Bell on our bicycles. Well, afterwards we went to the gas station and we bought some candy and some sodas and some baseball cards and came back to the house, and mom asked for the change, and I didn't hand her anything that folded. It was just what jingled. And she wanted to know where the rest was. And I told her that we had bought stuff, and my mom cried. It was about $10. And that made a profound impact on me that I don't know what this is, but I ain't going to do this. And eventually my dad, quit his job working at the prison and went full time into sales. And my family's life changed immediately. I mean, we went from, renters in small houses with beater cars, and I never saw dad because he was always working, 2 jobs, to, hey, now we're going to Disney World and mom has a new Lincoln and we just put a pool in to the new house. And sales made all of that possible. But I understood that meant I needed to not do as well as my dad. I wanted to do better than my dad. And not like in a mean way. My dad was my role model and we still work together, and he's one of my very best friends, but I knew what it had done for him, and I wanted to be able to do for my parents. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to do so. But as a little kid, my mom was always hyping me up and telling me, "Oh, your future's so bright. You got to wear shades, and you're going to have a Rolls Royce and a driver, and you're going to live behind gates, and you're going to have a mansion," and blah, blah, blah. So my mom was pumping me up full of motivation as a kid. And I did get straight A's and got a scholarship as a sophomore in high school. And I just thought, hey, I'm just going to apply myself. And nobody was telling me no. There was nobody at my house saying you couldn't do it. All I had was, yeah, you can, yeah, you can, yeah, you can. So I just did. And when I found the mortgage business, I found it. And we've all doubled down, and the name of my mortgage company is First Family Mortgage. And my mom works there, and my dad works there, and my sister works there, and both of my cousins work there. And that wasn't the case. I was first, but once I discovered it, I brought everybody in, and it worked.
I want to shift gears here a little bit because you talk about the people that you work with, and I think that's a good place to shift the conversation. When you have a company that is writing mortgages in 41 states, and it's as large as it is, I imagine that people management has to be a daunting sort of task for you. Talk about people management at scale and the importance of trust. I can't imagine. I put myself in your shoes here. I can't imagine being able to kind of just be okay with the people that I brought on. Are there strategies that you use to kind of let go of some of that stuff? You talk about failure, but when you're not in complete control all the time, does it get to you?
Yes and no. I mean, in my real life, I've had, folks in my life who struggled with addiction. And through that process, I attended some Al-Anon meetings and I learned about the serenity prayer and how I could apply that to my life. And I don't stress out about things I can't control. So, well, for one, I don't stress about anything anyway. I know that sounds crazy, but I almost feel like stressing out or getting worried about things is almost like praying for bad stuff to happen. So I just don't do it. And the biggest way I've been able to avoid stress is if I can't affect the outcome, I'm not too worried about it. All I can do is do my best. And I remember even as a kid, I struggled in some of my AP classes in high school and I got a C for the first time in my life. And my dad asked me one question. He said, "Son, did you do your best?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And there was no hesitation for him to believe me. And he wasn't mad. He said, "Well, son, if you did your best, do you need a tutor?" I'm like, "No, I'm going to prove that I can do this. I can't promise that I'll get an A next time, but I'll get a B." And eventually I got there and I got an A and it was fine. But, if my best won't get it done, it kind of is what it is. I don't worry about it. And I know that sounds really simplistic and it feels make believe to embrace that, but we had really inclement weather here and the roads were shut down and people were sliding all over and, wrecking cars left and right. I just stayed home. I'm not in control of what's going to happen on that road, and I'm not going to get stressed out about it. I can work from home. We learned how to do that during COVID. I haven't forgotten. So here I'll be and we'll be fine. But if I can't control it, I don't get stressed out about it. So yes, there are 1,000 fires that happen at the mortgage company every day. There's no way I can handle them all. I can recruit the best. We can hire the best. We can retain the best. We can do our best, but that's all we can do. And at the end of the day, they could go do this at any mortgage company. It comes down to who do you want to do it with? And either we're a good fit and it's the right culture and we all want to see the same, we're all sort of equally yoked, to use a biblical term, or we're not. And if we're not, that's okay. I was doing mortgages before I met these folks, and I'll be doing mortgages if I don't know these folks anymore. But I know that I'm going to try to be a good person and do the right thing and be fair to everyone and let the chips fall where they may, man. I'm not going to get stressed out about the result. I never focus on the result. I live in the process. Did we do a good job? Did we do our best? And if we did, we'll be successful. Maybe not on our timetable, but we'll get there.
Vision's important when you're running a company as well.
Sure.
So, I mean, the company is your baby, right?
Yeah.
It reflects how you feel about the business. How do you make your vision for the way things are done systemic, trickle down from top layers of leadership and kind of encourage the people that work for you to hold your values? We
have an advisory board meeting every other month or so. And then once a year, we'll get everybody together, all the sort of major influencers. And we just have a conversation that sort of charts the course of the company and what's working and what's not. And it's really simplistic. Let's do more of what's working, less of what's not. And if you're always looking to improve, you're striving for perfection, but you're settling for excellence, we'll be okay. And, there's the old GE principle of always cut your lower third. I'm not sure I necessarily aim for that, but I do think that, some folks occasionally need to be invited to leave if they don't have the same vision. And if you let that negativity and that undermining or whatever, someone who is sort of the bad apple in the bunch, they really can spoil the bunch. So we're going to try to seek people who are good team members most of all. I would much rather have a great group of team members where everyone works well together and will all be successful, as opposed to someone who wants to be the top producer, puff their chest out, and make everyone around them feel like shit. We don't want that. I don't care how many loans you can close and how profitable you'll be. Go do it somewhere else. If you're not a good team member, if it's not the right culture fit, it won't work. But I find that if it's a good culture fit and we are good team members and we all want to be here and want each other to be successful, and it's not us versus them or me versus you, then we're going to grow and we're going to be successful. But if I'm only interested in me and I don't give a darn about you, you're probably not going to make it very long. Not just here, in life. Your marriages are going to fail. You're going to be a bad parent. You're not going to be a good friend. I'm way more focused on being a good friend and a good partner and all of that than, having another zero in your bank account.
talk about the importance of an employee being coachable.
Yeah, it's super important. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to trust and respect. If they trust you and they respect you, you're going to be where you need to be. But if they don't trust you or they don't respect you, you should probably invite them to leave. They're not going to be good team members. But either, any job I've ever had, I could always look to someone else and I could say, hey, I need to do what they're doing. Hey, I need to figure out how they're doing it. And if they're approaching it from, I know everything on day one, you don't have the right person. If they're not really receptive to getting better or they're not interested in growth, then you're not like-minded. And I would encourage you to invite them to go to another organization or find another spot on the bus where they can be passionate about growth. But if they don't care, they're not going to be successful. I can't hire care. I can hire resumes. I can hire talent. I can hire skill sets. I can hire someone who's going to show up on time, but I can't make you care. Either you do or you don't. And those are the folks that become lifers with you and you want to see do well and grow. And, I've got 4 or 5 people that I talk to every day who I'm going to refer to as, hey, this is my right-hand person. And by the way, they all are. It turns out I've got 5 right hands, but those are people who I know if I send them something tonight at 5 or tomorrow morning at 5 or tonight at midnight, they're on it because they understand for me to bother them at this particular hour, this must be important. And I want to be a good team member. And they sometimes look at it like if I'm Stockton, they're supposed to be Malone. They're supposed to get the ball in the hoop. And if I wasn't throwing them the ball, I'd be throwing it to someone else. And they want it to be them because they want to do more and they want to grow and they want that recognition and they get it from me in spades. But when you run across somebody who just doesn't have the right attitude or the right approach towards growth or doing better, either they don't trust you or they don't respect you. But either way, they probably shouldn't be with you in that spot very much longer. And by the way, that doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means they may not be on the right seat on the bus. I've had people who were, not great in one job and phenomenal in another. And that comes back to me not being able to be a good manager and delegate properly. You and I, we could, if we really worked at it, we could be great linemen on a football team. We're probably not cut out to be wide receivers. And if somebody cast us in that role, I'm going to say that ain't on us. you weren't paying attention. You didn't recognize what I was good at. So as with everything else, everything's wrestling. You accentuate the positives, hide the negatives. We're not tall, fast, lanky dudes with great vertical jumps. We're big old boys who can push beef around. We need to be linemen. So it's up to us to assess their skills, but then figure out where they can best suit us and our mission, whatever that may be, and then go from there. But it's been my experience that if somebody is already sort of have their arms crossed about your guidance, they're probably not going to be in the right position. Just my opinion.
So how do you motivate people? People are motivated by money and power and influence and all those things. As a boss, how do you do that? What is your go-to?
I ask questions. I know that sounds silly, but it's back to listening. I've got to figure out what their goal is. And so even when I'm trying to hire someone new, like I have people who approach me all the time who say, man, I'd really love to work with you at the mortgage company, or man, I really want to work with you on podcasts. My question is always the same, or my response is always the same. And it's always a question. What do you want to do? And most of the time they say, well, I could do anything. I could do this. I could do that. I didn't ask what you can do. I asked, what do you want to do? Because if you want to do something, I won't have to ask you to. I know that sounds silly, but if you are motivated by that job or position, like I want to do wrestling podcasts. So you don't have to ask me to get up at 6 a.m. and record with Bruce Prichard because that's the only time Vince McMahon will allow him. I want to do it. Now, yeah. I could dig ditches. You're going to have to ask me to get up and do that at 6 a.m. Now, I'm technically capable of it, but I don't want to. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I don't strive to. I don't want to be better at it. Hell, I don't want to do it in the first place, but I could. And so when people say, oh, I could do this or I could do that, I just cut it off. I didn't ask what can you do. I want to know what do you want to do. And if you're motivated by